Sonic World is basically the closest thing we had to a Sonic Adventure 3. I mean, that's basically how it plays. It's Sonic without the boost. Basically how Sonic is, well, he controls pretty tightly. He controls a lot better than he does in Heroes in 06, and definitely better than the boost games. He controls pretty well, although for some reason it was still a little awkward for me to get used to him at first. His homing attack is weird because the homing attack in this game, it keeps momentum. So like it'll always keep going forwards. It doesn't stop after you hit something. And I guess that's good for keeping the flow going, but it's a little overwhelming at first, so you've gotta be careful. But it feels pretty good once you get used to it. I just kinda miss the targeting reticule that it had, because in the boost games, you always knew that you could hit something. But just like in the adventure games, just line up directly in front of the enemy and you're guaranteed to homing attack it. The way the spin dash works is actually really cool, because you can actually use the spin dash while moving forwards. And it's nice to do that on top of slopes. Like in SE2, I didn't feel like using the spin dash unless I had to go as fast as possible, because I was forced to stop in order to spin dash. But in this game, you can keep the flow going by just holding B, and there you go. I mean, it's not the SA1 spin dash where you constantly mash the button and you can basically use it as a boost. But the thing is that you kind of felt like angle Sonic when you were doing that, because a spin dash would send you directly forwards, and if you were holding the control stick a little too far to the left or right, then you would go way too far to the left or right from the spin dash. This is my favorite spin dash in all 3D Sonic now. Like anytime I want, I could just go into the spin dash. Although the level design is too linear to allow you to take shortcuts through spin dash jumping, which was my favorite thing about SA1's level design. But on the plus side, the level design in this game doesn't have you constantly getting caught on the walls of very narrow speed sections and having you lose all your momentum because of it. Well, not all your momentum, you're still moving forwards, but not nearly as fast, and you go out of spin dash form. But the big problem I have with the level design in this game is that it's very automated when you think about it. There's lots of dash pads and springs, and I didn't used to care about that stuff, but playing Green Hill Paradise made me realize that maybe it could be a problem. Other than that nitpick, it is pretty fun going through the levels. Like, it actually feels like a challenge. When I first played Final Rush in this game, I got a game over. I guess it was because I wasn't used to it yet. The best thing about this game is that not only is it like an adventure game, but it actually has abilities that the boost games have. It has the drift, and it has the stomp. The drift is perfect for beautifully making sharp 90-degree turns, which you could never really do in the adventure games. You would just turn, and maybe lose your momentum while doing it. So you can keep going fast, even when you have to turn directly to left or right. Of course, I bet if they actually did this for a real adventure game, people would complain about it because they brought abilities from boost games to it. But this is exactly how I'd imagine the ideal Adventure 3 to be. It's taking what worked and what was done well with the boost games and improving upon it. You have the drift for making sharp turns, and you have the stomp for precise platforming. If you ever feel like you're going too fast, if you ever feel like you're going too far forwards, you can just stomp to precisely land. Unfortunately, the camera doesn't really show you what's below you very well, which is especially noticeable when you're playing as Tails and you're flying. So you gotta be careful where you stomp, because you could easily end up stomping to your death. But this is an excellent game for teaching you to get used to stomping in 3D. And you're definitely going to be using the stomp a lot in the Mach speed sections. Thankfully, there's only a few of those. The only problem I have with the camera is that it's entirely manual. It doesn't turn around to show you which way you have to go, like in the adventure games. So, as a result, it can be kind of annoying always having to manually turn the camera stick when you have to turn to progress with the level. But that's a minor nitpick. At least you can move the camera. There's basically 3 different ways to play the game. Well, it doesn't really change anything. There's single, there's pair, and there's team. You can choose a single character or multiple characters, and somehow you can change characters in the level itself. I don't really see the point of having pair there. I mean, it's basically just team, but with one less character. What's the point? I like choosing team because it feels a little less lonely having other characters with you, even if they aren't really doing anything. And it's always good to have a crutch there where if you fall off the level, because the levels are surrounded by bottomless pits all the time, which is typical for 3D Sonic games, it's a lot less frustrating to get back to where you last were if you can switch to a flying type whenever you want. The problem is that the flying type kind of makes the game feel a little boring because it's too easy. The thing about team though is I'm not really sure what button you have to press on the controller to change characters. Because here's the problem with the controls hints. For some reason they think that you're using a keyboard to play a 3D platformer. Keyboard controls don't work for platformers. In fact, they made Sonic Before and After the sequel nearly unplayable to me. Thankfully you can use Pinnacle Game Profile, and you can use that to download a profile of controls for this game. So it is entirely possible to play this game well with the keyboard doesn't control as badly as you'd expect, but it is much better to use an Xbox 360 controller. But that makes it really frustrating because the controls hints still act like you're using a keyboard. So finding out what button does what on the controller is a tedious process of mashing every button you can to see what works, and hoping you don't spin dash off the edge of the stage to your death while doing so. Or drift, because you can actually start drifting from a standstill, so that moves you forwards automatically, which is kind of weird. I do generally like having the controls hints there. Because your characters always have so many different things they can do. It's good to have a reminder there. I mean, there are a few useless abilities. Like, I don't really see the point of having a close range melee attack when you have the homing attack, because it feels like you're just putting yourself in danger by getting too close to the enemy and then they hit you. Unfortunately, not every character in the game has a homing attack. The flight type is forced to use projectile attacks, like Tails has dummy ring bombs from 06 and Heroes. And while they do have pretty good range, the problem is that you're always guaranteed to get hit when you use them. So the combat becomes just a confusing, awkward, clumsy mess where you don't trust the game to not make you lose rings. And the same problem of not being able to tell which rings are fake and which ones are real are present here. It is kind of annoying fighting enemies with any character who doesn't have a homing attack. And you're actually encouraged to fight enemies in this game because they drop Chaos Drives, which can actually level up Chow. That's right, they actually have a Chow Garden in a 3D fan game. And it's even more bare bones than SA1's. I mean, at first, you really have your hopes up, because the Chow Garden actually looks like it would in a Sonic Adventure 3. It's a Chow Garden with next-gen graphics. It really is amazing that a 3D fan game, the 3D fan games have progressed to the point where they can actually have better graphics than a GameCube game. But yeah, like, it looks gorgeous like the rest of the game. And so you really have your expectations high, and then you pet a Chow. Look at this animation. Instead of your character bending down to pet the Chow, you have this hand just show up out of nowhere and just pet the Chow's head. What seems like a nitpick at first completely and utterly destroys the appeal of petting the Chow in the first place. What's the point of a virtual pet simulator where you can't actually feel like you're bonding with the Chow. I know it's a fan game, but I don't think that's enough of an excuse to completely cheap out on the animation. What was so hard about giving every character at least one more animation for petting Chow? It's just really frustrating because it's such an easy thing to fix, and they didn't do it. The Chow Garden has a lot of things going for it. I like the lines that appear at the bottom right corner of the screen that tell you when Chow are doing things like this Chow is hungry, this Chow is asleep. It's really helpful because the garden is so gigantic and easy to get lost in that, well, at the very least, the game actually remembers where Chow last were. It doesn't randomly spawn them when you enter a garden like in the adventure games. So you don't have to worry about going to a garden and then the Chow that were previously asleep are now in the pool and they get mad at you when you pick them up. So that's good at least. And I really like how there's a separate stat and meter for intelligence and luck. I think that's something the adventure game should have done. And you can even raise those stats with chaos drives of your own. So that's pretty cool. And the black market, well, it is kind of tedious to get there. Especially because here's the biggest problem I have with the garden. There are invisible walls everywhere. So, well, you may think that you can just fly and, you can go through the gigantic garden really easily. Instead, they have these invisible walls there to screw you, and you're forced to cross the bridges. I don't understand why they did that. I mean, at least the garden isn't glitchy. At least you're not constantly forced to work around your Chow getting stuck on walls and stuck in the pool like in the Hero Garden. But I'd rather play the Hero Garden because it's not gigantic, I never get lost in it, and at least I always have stuff to do because I have to keep an eye on the Chow. In Sonic World, there's nothing to do with the Chow at all. You just stand there and let time pass. I mean, at least there's a cool night and day cycle. But, and I like how the music changes. But it doesn't really mean anything if there's no races and no karate, so raising the stats of Chow is practically pointless. I love all the things that the black market sells. It sells cool hats that aren't terrible masks, they're actually hats, and you can give your Chow a mustache and stuff. The eggs look really cool, and I like the huge variety of food. And you can actually have your Chow take seeds from fruit and stomp at the seeds to plant them. You don't have to beat a race to make a Chow wander around the garden and look for some random spot in the garden that's arbitrarily determined to be a place where you can plant a tree. It's actually much more streamlined here. It's frustrating because there are things about the Chow Garden in this game that show an improvement, but the Chow system just doesn't match up to a game made in 2001 anyways, because it doesn't have the Chow race, it doesn't have the Chow karate, and the Chow, they don't even react when you attack them, this is the first time I've ever done that. Just because I wanted to see what would happen. They don't shake or cry or anything. Do the Chow even react at all? They have hearts appear over their heads, but they seem more lifeless. It's like the graphics look great, but the animation is just, it's not as good as you'd expect it to be. Again, there's no excuse for this. So ultimately, the Chow Garden is a disappointment. And it's a problem because, well, what other reason do you have to stop to defeat enemies and get chaos drives? The annoying thing is that they didn't fix the problem where, you don't automatically get chaos drives just from beating enemies. You have to completely destroy the pace of the level by stopping to collect them. You know, you think that they played the adventure game so much that they would know to fix that problem. The annoying thing is that it seems like the level designers liked 06 a little too much, because in the later levels, like in Lost World, for some reason they have this obsession with forcing you to beat waves of enemies like it's a beat 'em up or something. And at least they don't have giant health bars, but it's still boring mashing the A button again and again and again. Like, there are some problems with this game. The biggest one, the load times. Every time you start up the game, you have to wait forever for not only for the beginning black screen to disappear, which can honestly make you think on the first time that the game has crashed or isn't loading up or something. Not only do you have to wait a long time for the screen with the game's website to appear, which for some reason I can't record. It doesn't start recording until I reach the title screen, I don't know why. But every time you load up a level, or load up a boss fight for some reason, or try to go to the Chow Garden, you have to wait 23 seconds to load it up. I mean, I know it's a 3D fan game, so it's amazing that they're able to achieve this at all. I don't even know how they got the resources to make a game like this. But still, these load times are comparable to Sonic 06. And I guess that makes sense, because like it's an adventure game, and basically so is 06, is they're honoring that. But they're obviously not doing this on purpose, just it requires a lot of waiting for this game. It's not that big of a deal though. At least they have a meter showing how long you have left for the loading, which 06 didn't do. I do like that there's no story because, well, one, it's a fan game, so the story wouldn't matter anyways. People would just dismiss it as fan fiction. And two, I like being able to pretend that Anti-Miles, that Anti-Tails has actually joined the Freedom Fighters, and playing through the levels is actually him doing missions for them. Like, that's the cool thing about not having stories, that you can make up your own. The best thing about Sonic World, aside from its gameplay, is that there's just a gigantic amount of characters to choose from. Although I really hate the fact that you have to get enough emblems to unlock the characters. I mean, the fan game's about having fun, so I don't really see the point of forcing you to do stuff in the game to unlock stuff. I mean, there's a debug mode, so I don't really see the point of, like if they intentionally put the debug mode in the game, but they don't let you use it to unlock anything. In fact, they actually say, you cheated! And they don't allow you to save your progress after using it. What's the point, then? The annoying thing about the emblems is that, I mean, sure, you only have to get a few of them, but you have to get some emblems to be able to use mods in the first place. At no point does the game ever tell you this. Not even the official website tells you this. So, at first I thought my game had glitched and wouldn't let me use mods, because I wanted to play as Anti-Tails from the beginning, but turns out you have to beat a few levels in order to do so. So that was kind of annoying. It doesn't help that every time you turn on mods in the options menu, the game is programmed to shut off. So I thought that the game crashed every time I tried to turn on the mods. It's very unclear like that. You're probably not going to be able to unlock all the characters because you have to fight horrible boss fights that suck to unlock everything. Yeah, I didn't even really bother with the boss fights because Sonic has never really been known for having good boss fights. I play Sonic games for levels, and the one boss fight I tried out is basically the Sonic and Shadow boss fight in SA2, like the final one. Only it doesn't work because you're obviously attacking the character and he doesn't get attacked, so it sucks. Another problem I have with this game is that every level it's not original. I mean, like, people bash on Forces for having levels that aren't original, but I guess because it's a fan game, it's perfectly okay. Even Forces has more original levels than this. The only original level is actually the worst level in the game. In fact, it honestly makes me wonder if it was intentionally made to suck. Because it has music that, well, I really like it. It's an a cappella thing. It's all surreal and stuff. But it just kind of feels like it's mocking you because it's such a cheery theme. And then you've got the worst level time in the game. In a mock speed zone, obviously you're forced to always be moving directly forwards, and that gives you a thrilling sense of speed. But the problem is that there are enemies. Even Sonic 06 did not have enemies in the mock speed sections. This was because you were constantly forced to run forward, so forcing you to stop and fight enemies was kind of unrealistic. Like, it is good that, thankfully, you can actually attack enemies by just jumping into them. That would make the Mach Speed zones unplayable if you couldn't. Like, it's also good that you can go into a spin dash by just holding the B button, even though you're constantly forced to move forwards. That's another good way to deal with the enemies, but there shouldn't be enemies at all! The big problem that destroys the cave level, aside from the fact that you're surrounded by bottomless pits all the time, which is another thing that the 06 Mach Speed zones didn't do. They didn't have bottomless pits at all sides. They just had walls, and granted you could get caught on the walls and die because you ran into them again somehow, but it was better than instant-kill death pits that are always surrounding you. But the biggest problem is that the ring scarcity means that you're going to get hit, and then you're going to lose rings, and then you're going to run to another enemy and die. And even for the, like the rest of the Mach Speed zones are much better designed than this. But even then, it can get kind of frustrating when you hit a checkpoint, you die, and then you respawn for that checkpoint, and there aren't rings right afterwards. So you immediately run into an enemy and die, which is a cheap shot. You just respawn from dying, and then you immediately get sent to an enemy without any rings. You'd think that they would playtest this and know it's a problem. But for the most part, I like the Mach Speed zones in this game. They don't control absolutely horribly like in 06. I mean, they still control a little bit slippery. Like, every time that you gotta very carefully tap left and right. And even then, that still sends you a little too far to left or right, so you always have to tap the opposite direction afterwards. But it's not nearly as loose and slippery as in 06, I assume. And at the very least, it's not like you're moving left and right so slowly, like in Speed Highway Act 2, that you barely feel like you're able to turn at all. So it controls well for the most part, and I feel it's challenging at least. Like, Sonic World gives you a challenge. If you're one of those people who hates Sonic games having too little challenge, like Generations, Sonic World has got you covered. It does feel like a satisfying challenge, it's just kind of annoying how you pretty much need to have a flight character to survive the Mach Speed sections, because sometimes you get flung off the edge, and you pretty much need to fly and hope that your flight doesn't run out in an inopportune time. Like, that's another thing, is you have a flight meter, but it's really hard to notice it. It's very easy to forget that it even exists because it's all the way on the corner of the screen. It's just like in Heroes. At least it's not completely immersion breaking, like appearing literally on the character's head. But speaking of Tails' flight, I had a really hard time figuring out how to fly at first. I assumed that it would be like in the adventure games, where you just held down the A button. Because naturally, this is an adventure game. But it turns out, you fly by mashing the A button. It's just like in the classic games, or an adventure game. I mean, at no point does the game ever explain this to you. So I initially dismissed the flight as useless. I did end up learning how to use it though, and it's a perfect crutch. But again, if you're able to fly, it kind of makes the game boring, because not only is there a lot of automation and scripting, although it's better than no scripting at all and you're constantly hugging the walls of Windy Valley. But again, if you're able to fly, it kind of makes the game boring, because not only is there a lot of automation and scripting, although it's better than no scripting at all and you're constantly hugging the walls of Windy Valley. But Sonic World is a fun game, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's like harmless, dumb fun. But after playing Green Hill Paradise, again, I was never the type to really care that much about dash pads and springs and automation. I used to think that was just a fanboy thing, like wanting too much, but playing Green Hill Zone in this game really draws to attention just how automated the level design in this game is. I mean, seriously, play Green Hill Zone in this game. Half the time, hell, probably 99% of the time, you're just getting pushed along a straight line by dash pads. And the rest of the time, you're just moving forwards in a straight line. Is there even any platforming at all? The only remotely challenging part is at the lake area, where you're really worried of being flung off the edge of the stage to your death because you're moving so fast. And that's bad level design. That's not even a legitimate challenge. You pretty much need to have a flight type there. And that's basically what'll make and break the game for you. And it's weird, this game, it both works as a great adventure game, and it kind of kills my interest in it. Because, again, I understand why people complain about the boost, like, oh, it's automation. It's like, you go fast because you hold a button, not because you've earned it. But then I look at the adventure games, and their level design is all about hitting dash pads and hitting springs and just going through automatic loops and watching Sonic go. How is that any better than the boost? At least with the boost, there's a challenge to it because you earn the boost by collecting rings, and you can choose to go fast without having to hit a dash pad. Without the boost, it's like level designers feel like they need dash pads and springs more than ever, because without the boost, you can't go fast. Except Green Hill Paradise has shown that it's perfectly valid to just design the 3D Sonic game with physics where if you're rolling down a slope for long enough, then you'll start going really fast. I mean, Adventure 2 did it just fine. You would spin dash down a long slope, you'd spin dash down a loop at the top of, say, Radical Highway. You go through the loop a lot faster than you would running through it painfully slowly. There were still dash pads in the loop anyways, but spin dashing down those roads that were going diagonally, that were going downwards, you definitely felt the sense of speed a lot more. If another adventure game was designed with level design like that, then I would definitely understand the appeal of the adventure games over the boost gameplay. Because it's like, here, now you've got a 3D Sonic game that's closer to the classics you love so much, because it's not about the boost, it's about traditional platforming. Look at all the platforming there is. And you earn your speed by rolling down slopes instead of hitting dash pads and springs. But the adventure games didn't do that. And I don't think they're ever going to do that. So, like, I don't see why a potential Adventure 3 would be a worthy contender to the boost, where you've always got this constant flow going. You're generally always boosting, going really fast, as a Sonic the Hedgehog game logically should be, because it's called Sonic, come on. But, I don't know. Platforming in 3D has never really been that fun to me. I mean, I haven't played Super Mario Galaxy yet, but that requires a Wii Nunchuck motion controls. But 3D platforming in general is a lot easier than 2D because there are a lot more positions on a platform that you can land on. Whereas in 2D, there's only a few pixels that you can land on. So it's a lot more satisfying. You don't take it for granted that you're going to land. With 3D, just like, well, of course I landed on that platform. Why wouldn't I? Whenever I'm playing a 3D Sonic game, I'm not looking forward to platforming. I don't play it to platform. I play it so I can go through the level as fast as possible and enjoy the thrills and satisfaction. Maybe it's because I'm an impatient person, which I am, but I just don't see why I'd enjoy 3D platforming in Sonic. 2D platforming is really satisfying, especially if it's more than just boring, bland jump on the platforms. That's where modern Sonic's abilities come in. The stomp for precision, the wall jump for variety. The slide can go fuck itself. But I like how the stomp can go through boxes, make you go down an area. It's like, I don't know. This game is good, but it reminds me of why I like the boost games too. Because the boost games, granted, they also had dash pads and springs, but Generations is a lot more fast, and it's fast without needing dash pads and springs. Before I actually played Sonic World, I saw a lot of horror stories about how glitchy the game could be. And that kind of scared me. But honestly, the game isn't nearly as glitchy as people make it out to be. Maybe it's the stage mods that are the problem. And I just don't understand, because the stage mods of Generations are great! So I don't understand why people think it's acceptable to release a buggy, unfinished product, especially if they're not an official game company that's forced to rush something out at a certain time. I don't understand why people would release stage mods where you can clip through the floor extremely easily, to the point where people are advised to use debug mode when playing the game. So I don't really feel inclined to try out stage mods at the moment. It's character mods that are really great, because there's just so many characters, and all the characters basically play like Sonic, even Big the Cat. This is how you do characters right. They still have stuff that makes them feel unique, even if the so-called unique abilities to them are really shared between certain characters. Like, Nicole can levitate, but I wouldn't be surprised if Silver could do that as well. I don't know, I haven't tested out every character yet. I don't really feel like it. It would kind of take forever. But yeah, this is how you do characters right. They still play like Sonic, they're still fun. And like, there's a power type, speed type, flight type. You can glide with Knuckles. I don't think you can climb with them. I mean, that would be kind of broken. Maybe you can, I haven't tested it out yet. But yeah, I haven't really saw any glitchiness aside from one mission. Actually, 2 missions. The big problem with the Flickies missions in this game, well, aside from the fact that it's inherently more tedious to try to accurately walk into tiny little birds in 3D, is that there's always this one last Flicky that's glitched so that no matter what, you can't collect it. The most annoying thing is that it kind of feels like your fault. That maybe it's just too tiny and you're not positioning yourself in the right place. But then you realize that, no, it really should be, it's directly going through your model. You should be able to pick it up, but you can't. So that's the only really game-breaking glitch that I've encountered. That and Green Hill Zone can potentially fling you off to your death in the pool area. Let's talk about Green Hill Zone for a second. This is the biggest example of how automated the level design is. In fact, Green Hill Zone in this game might as well be Splash Hill Zone. It's all about dash pads, springs, loop-de-loops, automated stuff. Now granted, I still like the level. In fact, I played it hundreds of times so I could grind for rings and lives. That's how I got to 99 lives in the first place. Because again, you can't use debug mode to get things like permanent extra lives and unlock all the characters, because, you know, that would be fun. And you gotta play it legit. You gotta play a fan game legitimately, even though it's technically not even legal to make it, because it's copyright infringement. I think the reason I'm so offended by the whole debug mode, you cheated problem with the game is that, you see, in the classic Sonic games, they didn't have that. They had cheats that you could figure out. I don't know how anyone was supposed to figure them out back then, because in the internet, we all know, press these certain button combinations at a certain time, and you can get all the emeralds. And they didn't punish you for it. If you wanted to get all the emeralds in Sonic 2 with cheat, you could. If you wanted to skip straight to the boss with a cheat, you could. If you wanted to activate debug mode and place any item you wanted, you could. And completing the level like that wouldn't cause the game to say, you cheated, and warp you back to the entrance of the level. I don't know, like, the way I see it, a fan game is there to have fun. I'm honestly not trying to sound condescending with this, but a fan game should not really have this kind of attitude where you have to play it exactly the way the developers want you to, and you can't cheat. Because, well, I think a solution would be you can make it so that there's separate rankings. Like, you can cheat to get any rank if you want to, but you can also make separate ranks for not cheating. I don't know. I just don't really see the point of restricting you. Like, if they put the debug mode in the game, and you're obviously going to use it to beat the terrible cave level that sucks. And, you know, getting to the goal ring with debug mode is a task all by itself, because the controls are actually a lot more intuitive than you think. And you can be holding up, and instead of going directly forwards, you'll go left and forwards or right and forwards. So you end up having to hold not just up, but also left and right on the keyboard. And you're going to be using the keyboard because seriously, do there really need to be so many options here? It feels very overwhelming trying to use the debug mode at all. You're basically going to activate by mashing buttons because you're always going to forget which key in the keyboard you need to activate it. Like, that's the thing. You're going to be using a controller for this game, but because you can't seem to switch characters with the controller, and because you need the keyboard to use debug mode, you're pretty much going to be forced to have the keyboard in front of you at all times anyways. But of course that doesn't defeat the purpose, because a controller is a controller. It's obviously better than a keyboard. But yeah, the debug mode, you can't precisely control your character in midair the way you think you could. So just getting yourself to the goal ring is a task all by itself, especially because sometimes when you spawn your character, he'll end up facing entirely the wrong direction and just launch himself off the edges of the arena to his death. Like, why is Knuckles facing this way? He was facing forwards the entire time, wasn't he? Why did he get turned around? And they don't tell you that holding A makes you go up and X makes you go down. So that's kind of unintuitive as well. And seriously, do they really have to have that many options? I have no idea how I managed to change to Knuckles. I really like all the different menu themes this game has. Although it seems a little pointless to have that many, at least it makes sure that everyone can be happy. That and the giant amount of characters that there are. And the Archie Sonic character pack. Like, I think it's really cool. You can play as Scourge, you can play as Miles. And the reason I'm choosing this menu theme is because, well, let's face it, it has some pretty badass music.